everybody. Welcome back to the I Played Too podcast, where relatives of famous athletes, entertainers, and musicians get to tell their stories. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, former LPGA golfer Charlotta Sorenstam joins the show. Charlotta started golfing at a young age in Sweden. After that, she went to the University of Texas, where she won a national title and became an All-American. In her pro career, Charlotta won one LPGA title and had multiple other top 10 finishes. Her sister Annika is considered to be one of the best golfers of all time, and they became the first sisters to each gross over $1 million on the LPGA Tour. Charlotta, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. I'm happy to be here.
First question is, how did you pick up golf growing up in Sweden?
It was kind of a sport that our parents played, and they didn't have any babysitters. So we had to tag along. Sometimes they left us on the putting green, and then sometimes we hopped on their push carts, so they had to push the round or drag their carts, not just only with their clubs, but us on the back of the cart. So that was our way, kind of spending a little family time together as well. But getting introduced to the sport, yeah, that's kind of how it started, that we were at the golf course because our parents wanted to play.
How young were you when you first went on the course?
I think I was about 7 years old until I got introduced to the sport, at least. Wasn't quite interested in it, but neither was my sister. So it took a couple of years until we actually moved to a different small town, not too far away, in another suburb of Stockholm. Our parents joined a golf course there. One day they had an exchange camp with a different golf course down south in Sweden, and it happened to be in the same town that our grandmother lived in. So we decided to go and join that camp. That's kind of when we started playing golf. I was around 10 years old, and my sister was between 12 and 13. So that was kind of the spark for both of us, going to a little camp down south, staying with our grandmother.
When I think of Sweden, I think of cold and long winters and not really a lot about golf. However, I know that there are several well-known Swedish golfers. In addition to you and your sister, there's Jesper Parnevik and a few others on the men's tour. How did golf become a popular sport in a country with a colder climate?
When you do have nice weather, everybody wants to be outside. Golf is a sport for most ages. It's not just the young adults that can play it actively or recreationally. And we joined a golf course there. Where we were in Sweden, you have about 7 months, maybe 7.5 really good months of golfing. And then it's kind of fall and tough winter for maybe 1.5, 2 months if you're unlucky. The further north you go, of course, it gets colder and darker and less summer months. But I think overall Swedes love to be outdoors. Therefore, golf is such a good sport in that regard because you can play with anyone with your handicap. We like to enjoy the outdoors and soak in as much sun as we can.
Did you play any other sports growing up other than golf?
I did, actually. Golf is, of course, the summer sport. Both of us were active in tennis and a little bit in volleyball. We played in a small team in volleyball, but tennis kind of was the bigger sport for the winter. When I turned 15, it was kind of that stage where you have to decide because you're getting pretty good at both sports, but you got to do it all year round to stay good and keep up with the rest of the players. Funny enough, we both decided to choose golf for the same reason without even discussing it, that it was an easier sport to practice. In tennis, you always need somebody, even though we had each other. But it always needed a partner that was hopefully a little better than you so you can become better. And in golf, all you needed was some golf clubs, golf balls, and a piece of grass, and you can actually practice it. So that's what we chose.
Once you made the decision to choose golf, how easy was it for you to get access to either a public club or a private club so you could continue to play as often as you could when the weather allowed?
Well, we were members at a semi-private club. That's most common in Sweden. It was no problem for us to practice how much we wanted to play whenever available. Tee times were there. And then there was, of course, some other youngsters in our age, mostly boys, that we could practice with or play against on the course and so forth. The course was only 3 kilometers away from our house. Most of the time we took our bikes with or without the golf clubs on our backs or a push cart behind. If we were lucky, our parents could drive us. And then a little further along, they actually started creating a storage where we can put our golf bags at the golf course. But yeah, it was mostly bikes back and forth until high school, when I was lucky enough to go to a boarding school focusing on golf, which is located about 6 hours drive from our house, where 20 other students were doing the same thing and focusing on golf. It's kind of what I work with right now at IMG Academy. It was a small academy for golf.
What was it like being at the boarding school, being away from home for what I imagine was the first time for an extended period?
It was an adjustment for sure. Luckily, we had nice 2-bedroom apartments. We stayed 2 and 2 in these. And it was, again, very short distance to the school, the golf course, so we could use our bikes, because you can't drive a car until you're 18 in Sweden. But it was great. It was because you're in an environment, just like I experienced with the students I have now, where everybody wants to practice. They want to get better and pushing each other, you're helping each other. And of course, you're a part of a program. It was a lot easier for you to take time off for tournaments and travel for them. Teachers were very helpful with your homework or tests and so forth. Again, very similar to what I'm working with right now. And I think having gone through that 3 years of high school like that, I think I can relate a lot to my students right now, even though a lot of years have passed in between, but I know what they're going through. So I can be there to help them with that aspect of being away from home. Some of them are not fortunate enough that, because they live so far away, that they can't go home until summertime, sometimes not even over Christmas. So I was lucky. I got home about every other month. I got home at least during those 3 years that I went there. It was also sponsored by the Swedish Golf Federation, so it was kind of subsidized for our family to do it. You had to perform a certain results in golf and, of course, in school to be elected to go there.
With the academic side, with the sporting side, and then traveling for tournaments, how hard was that for you to balance all three?
I don't think it was that hard for me, because I had a very specific goal in mind where I wanted to achieve with these 3 years that I was there. Not the greatest scholar myself, so I knew my limitations there, but I did okay. So I focused a lot more on the golf part while I was there. It was a great way to grow and learn and actually get ready. It was like a step before even college. I credit a lot to the high school years that I was ready for college in the United States.
Before we get to college, when you played the tournaments in high school, were you playing just in Sweden or were you traveling all over Europe?
Both, actually. Some of them were just local tournaments or regional tournaments within the Swedish Federation, or you could be part of the Swedish golf team and you were lucky enough to play the European Championships or higher end junior tournaments. So those were mostly in Europe. When I traveled within Europe for those tournaments, you travel as a team with the Swedish Federation and the Swedish golf team. The other tournaments, you were traveling with, hopefully with the same students that were at the school, and so you can travel together.
Taking a quick step back here, that wasn't your first trip outside of Sweden. I know your family lived in England for a little while when you were pretty young. What was that experience like, moving there, not knowing the language and so forth?
Scary at first, of course. Like you said, I didn't know the language. We were told at first we're going to be there for 2 years. Both my sister and I were devastated because that was such a long time. But as we went there and started kind of settling in, I think all of us loved our time in England. And luckily we got to extend another year. I did attend a Swedish school, though, so I could follow the Swedish curriculum in school and I wouldn't fall behind. The language came by for me. Since I'm dyslexic, it was watching TV and listening to them speak on TV. That's how I picked up on the language versus reading it and learning it in school. So for me, it was a dream come true to learn a new language without it being too hard or difficult for me. We had a great time. We did travel within England. Didn't play much golf then because I was still very young. I was only 7 when we moved there. So at 10 years old, our father moved back to Sweden with the job that he had with IBM. And we all had a great time. We cherished our time in England for sure.
You mentioned that you're dyslexic. In terms of learning and communicating and things like that, what kind of challenges has that presented for you throughout your life?
I think mostly in reading and writing, but sometimes also in communication because I'm a step ahead in words. So I forget to say a word out loud, even though I've said it in my head. It's gotten a lot better through the years, and the slower that I read, the better I read. And of course, when I do scorecards, it's always a triple check for me because one time in college I didn't triple check and I was unlucky that I didn't see two mistakes that the person who kept my scorecard had made, and I only saw one of them and was disqualified from that tournament because it was a lower score than I actually had. But I never did that again, that's for sure.
Speaking of college, you ended up going to the University of Texas in Austin. What was the recruiting process like for you in being a high school student in Sweden? How did you discover the opportunities of American colleges to go play golf?
We were lucky because other students or players had done it before us. And my sister kind of started our family, and she was already at Arizona. But correspondence was regular mail, snail mail, and telephone calls. And when the schools started coming in of letters and so forth, it was tough because we didn't know much about them. But luckily, because I went to the boarding school for golf there, they had results. They had my scripts from school. So it kind of helped them with knowing about me through the Swedish golf team as well. When the schools came in with offers, my goal was to find somewhere warm and also, of course, the best scholarship I could find. And you never did a recruiting trip or anything, so you didn't really know anything about the coach or the team other than what you spoke to them over the phone or seen letters. I just chose where I thought I would stay warm, and that was Austin, Texas, even though I got offers from Arizona State, believe it or not, Stanford, but those three schools that I was looking in between, but I chose Texas. And I'm happy that I did because it was a great school.
How much of a culture shock was Texas compared to Sweden?
Well, luckily, there's a TV show called Dallas. I don't know if you've heard of it. In Sweden, it was on TV. Have you seen it, Rob?
I have. I live in Dallas, so I know all about it.
So I knew they were cowboys. I knew everything was big, but I didn't know that the hail can be big as baseballs. I've never seen that before. Nor did I know that you get really cold from air conditioning, because in Sweden, there's no such thing as air conditioning in 1992. It was a big shock, but again, at the same time, I really enjoyed it because it was really cool, because it was a lot like the show Dallas that we had watched growing up.
For me as a kid, I lived about 5 miles from South Fork Ranch, which is the ranch they based the show Dallas off of.
That's funny. Small world.
I know in Sweden, for example, the drinking age is 18, and in Texas, it's 21. But here we can drive at 16 while Sweden's 18. What were some of the other things that you noticed were different in Austin compared to where you grew up?
No, I couldn't understand that drinking part because in Sweden, we are actually 1 year older also when we start school. So I was 19 when I went to Texas, and that's considered an adult in Sweden. And here I had a driver's license, luckily, but I couldn't drink. I could not understand it. What else was different? I would say the changes in the weather. It was, again, a shock for me with the air conditioning because I got so sick the first week going in and out. The humidity from being on the golf course or walking around campus into buildings and classrooms and just sitting there freezing. I couldn't understand that part.
In terms of your time as a golfer at Texas, All-American, national title, what are some of your favorite memories of your time as a golfer in Austin?
We got to go to Hawaii and play. I was lucky to do that twice, I believe. It was a dream come true to go to Hawaii, first of all, and then actually play golf and go through rainforests and seeing pineapple grow out of the ground. Those things we don't have back home in Sweden. and then swimming in the waters where the current is so strong that you are moved 40 yards within just a few seconds. The wind, warmth of the weather, and the palm trees, that was wow. I really wanted to stay in Hawaii, but that was really the first best trip I had with our team.
What was the camaraderie like with your teammates at the University of Texas? Do you still have those friendships to this day?
I do. A lot of them are still there. One of my friends from college, she actually lives in Orlando. She was actually down here yesterday, but I couldn't meet up with her. So we meet now and then. We had a great camaraderie on our team. I think one funny story, though, our first round that we played, I made a hole-in-one with a 2-iron. I got the nickname Moose after that because that was powerful according to my teammates. So that's what my nickname became in college.
Did that nickname carry over to the Pro Tour?
No, it's only the college friends that call me that. I kept it to myself.
At that same time, there was a Dallas Cowboys player who's very well known who also had the nickname Moose.
Oh, yeah? Well, that's funny. It's the national animal of Sweden, so I thought it was pretty appropriate at the time.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was winning a national championship like for you?
Oh, wow. I'm actually sitting in my office right now, and I have some posters up behind me and some pictures from that day, the last day of the tournament. Of course, it was a stroke play, 72 holes. And I remember it was played at University of Georgia at the golf course there. Leading up to the first day, I went out one evening to soak myself in a hot tub, and I see these flying light bulbs. Wow, what is this? Of course, those were the light bugs. I've never seen those before. That was a fun little story or experience that I had, and it just made me feel good about myself. And I was playing well, but kind of just only remember having a 4-putt the last round, I think it was, on the 9th hole. And I kept putting, and it was a good putt, didn't go in. Second putt, good putt, oops, didn't go in. And then the third putt was also a good stroke and a putt, but it didn't go in. And then I finally tapped it in, my 4th putt, and I made a double on the 9th hole the last day. And I remember feeling, it's okay. I'm still in it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't nervous. And I usually get a little angry with myself if I make mistakes. Then walking up on the last hole there, and all my teammates were standing around the 18th green. And I remember I had a 2-stroke lead, so I could 3-putt, but I managed to get it in within 2. And as soon as I did, next thing I know, there's a camera right in my face. I've never had a big camera like that in my face, and I'm getting interviewed.
In American media coverage, we tend to do that.
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready for it. I'm like, I need to sign my scorecard. I think that's what I said anyway, because I didn't want to get disqualified for not doing the right thing. I have no idea where it was broadcasted, or maybe it was just local TV. I have no idea, but that was an interesting experience for sure, of not feeling that you can soak in the win on your own or with your teammates and your coach. It was, okay, here we go, media, tell us your thoughts about the win.
You win the national title. What was the next step for you?
It was, of course, summer break, and my goal was to come back and stay another year and to get more experience, and then decided I was going to turn pro. But while I'm at home in Sweden, I really don't want to go back because our coach retired and a new coach comes in. Since I went 3 years in high school for boarding, and again, I've been gone for another year, it was 4 years, I kind of felt like I wanted to stay home for a little bit. And I decided not to go back to Texas the following year, even though that original plan to get more experience and practice and play on beautiful golf courses, and the quality of them are so much better than they were back home. But mentally, I needed to stay at home. So I did, and play as many tournaments as I could with the Swedish golf team, or local, regional, or tournaments in Sweden.
How long did you stay in Sweden before deciding to take your opportunity and try to join the LPGA Tour?
Well, I actually decided to follow my original plan and turn pro after 1 year at home in Sweden, but I played on the European Tour for 2 years. And that was also the original plan because I wanted to get more experience as a pro before joining the LPGA. I mean, that was my ultimate goal, but I couldn't just go. I felt like I needed more experience. And so I played 2 years on the European tour. Didn't have a win, but a lot of top tens and a couple of second place finishes. So I felt ready. So I signed up in the LPGA Q school at the end of 96, where the rookie year, you could say 97. And luckily I finished second in the qualifier. So I got my card for 97. So that was my rookie year.
You played your first LPGA tournament, and what do you remember from that?
Yeah, that was actually an interesting little experience because I play really well, and it's Lake Buena Vista in Orlando. I get so lucky because I play so well that I got paired in the last group and the last day with one of my idols, and that's Nancy Lopez. My first thought is it this easy to play on the LPGA tour and get paired in the last group on the last day with Nancy? And of course, I shouldn't have thought that way. I should have just kept my cool and played like I did the first 3 days. So I didn't play as well, but I did finish, I believe, top 10. So I was pretty happy with my overall results, but quite an experience playing with Nancy because she was then the player to play with if you were lucky. She was the big star.
Your sister at this point was already becoming a fairly dominant player. Was there any kind of competition between you in terms of not so much necessarily winning a tournament, but trying to beat each other?
Yes and no. I think it's always been a competition between us, but it's been in a good way, more of an encouraging and pushing way, so that if the other one does well, the other one's really happy about it and want us to do well. In my mind, I always thought, if she can do it, I can do it. So, and having her there, I think for me helped a lot, that I kept pushing myself, working harder, because if she does it, I can do it.
What was it like being paired with her, because you're rooting for each other, but also playing against each other?
Not a lot of times were we paired together because of her ranking and my ranking for a while there, because they had us in different A groups and B groups, so to speak, on the tee sheet. When she shot 59, we got lucky to be paired together. The reason why was I was defending champion and she was ranked number 1 in the world. So that's how they used to do it. I don't think they do that anymore. It was at Moon Valley, another Phoenix tournament. Again, I was lucky to be paired with her and play with her. And I felt it was such a magical moment, her shooting 59. It was not my career, but it was part of my best experience as a professional golfer, watching her shoot 59.
59 is absolutely insane.
She could have shot 58, but she missed the last putt. So, but yeah, she started with 8 straight birdies. That was really magical. The other story to that is that we started on the 10th hole, and my caddy came to me when we were standing on the 14th green. So this is our 5th hole. He writes down in his yardage book 59 question mark. Every time I think of that, I get goosebumps, because that was amazing how he could think about that while we're playing with her, and it ended up happening.
Did you get to talk to your parents after that tournament and kind of share the moment with them too?
Our dad was there, I believe, but I remember my sister was coming over to my house that evening to cook dinner for me. So at least I have something to speak to her about during the round, instead of saying, okay, when's your next birdie? I did ask her about what she was making for dinner, and I remember it was fish soup. And while we're playing, I didn't think that sounded so good, but it was the best fish soup I've ever had.
That's very cool. I love it. Fish soup. You mentioned you were the defending champion. What was it like that final day to know that this could be attainable? You could finally get that elusive victory after several second place and top 5 finishes.
It was also one of those days I felt really good. I remember the night before Sunday morning, I woke up remembering my dream that I won, and I was happy about winning. I wasn't afraid to win. You know how that feeling is? Sometimes you're scared of winning, but in this case, I wasn't. I was pleased and I was calm. And that's how my mood was that last day. Again, it was very similar to the feeling I had when I won the NCAA championship quite a few years earlier. I think that's what they call the zone. But it's hard to say, how did I get in there? And why didn't I get in there more often? That's the big question all professional athletes have. But last hole, coming down the stretch, it's a par 5. I did not go for it in 2. I had a lead, and it was ahead of Kari Webb, who was also number 2 in the world, and then my sister. They were currently in 2nd and 3rd place. So I knew that I had to make a par or better to win the tournament. Luckily, I made a birdie on the last hole, so I won by 2. First person that comes up on the green is my sister, who gave me a big hug. I remember saying to her, so this is how it feels to win.
It's like, I finally beat you.
I think it was more of, it's not as hard as you imagine it to be. Every professional athlete, the biggest opponent is yourself. So when you can overcome yourself and you have enough talent, of course, to win, you can. But that's the hardest part.
You mentioned overcoming yourself and the fear of winning. When you coach players, how do you help them do that? What do you say? What techniques do you talk about with them?
I tell them it's embracing being nervous, first of all, and this is why you do this. You put all these hours in to get in this mode, to have this feeling inside. That's what you strive for. So just embrace it, because that's what you want to have. If you're afraid of it or try to work against it, is when nothing really will have a good outcome from it. Golf, compared to a lot of other sports, is very mental, especially when you practice, because it's not a reaction sport. So you're in charge, and your thoughts have to be controlled every single time you practice. Every single little word that you say to yourself or how you react, you have to train yourself to get in that right state of mind that you need to become a winner.
How does one train to get into that mindset to attain the level that you attained and other golfers attain in terms of success on the pro tour?
Oh, that's a tough question. Well, of course, you have to have the skills, first of all. The physical skills, I should say, the technical skills. And then you have to put a piece of puzzle combined with the mental skills. And a great saying is that people who win the most have failed the most. And when you fail, don't see it as failing. You have to see it as a learning experience. If you learn from everything that you do, even when you win, that's when you become even a stronger competitor. But it's also wanting to win, willing to win, and be happy to win. It's not that you have to win. I can, I will, and I do. The difference between good players and great players, or the greatest, it's how they overcome themselves and their thoughts and the willingness to win. And I think that comes from within the heart.
I want to get this in because I think it's a pretty cool story. In 2003, you missed the cut at the LPGA Championship, but you saved someone's life. And as a result, the following year, you received the 2004 Mary Bea Potter Award, which recognizes an individual or organization in golf who, through a heroic or humanitarian act, saves or better the lives of others. Could you kind of take me through that? And what was it like to feel and know that you're saving a life?
One of those stories where I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I didn't even remember I missed the cut. So, because this event was more important to me. It was a few players. I think it was my sister, Wendy Ward, and myself, and also the commentator at the event, Donna Caponi, was sitting inside the little lunchroom that we had, and we're sitting at 2 round tables. All of a sudden, my sister goes, oh, I have to use the ladies' room. So she walks away, and while she walks away and closes the door, I hear, help, help. I stood up, and I look behind me, and that's Donna Caponi sitting, choking on something. The third player, Wendy Ward, is just in shock. She's not moving. Luckily, I recall from being saved myself, so to speak, but my mother actually, when I was little, so I had some idea what to do when you got something stuck in the throat, because my sister gave me a little piece of candy when I was way too young to have one. And luckily, Mom came in the room and saw that I was blue in the face. And she took me by my legs, turned me upside down, and hit my back. And bloop, the little candy came out. So I just jumped into action because I knew you can do that to someone. Even though I couldn't lift Donna Caponi upside down, I decided to do the Heimlich maneuver on her. And she was really near the end, is what she told me afterward, when she started bending over and I pumped her in the chest to see if I can get things out. And then all of a sudden she bends a little more forward and I hit her back as hard as I can. And plop, this little piece of apple comes out of her throat. So that's the story when I saved her life. And that was one of the highlights of my life, to be just a normal person in the right place at the right time and knowing what to do, and then getting lucky in doing it and saving her life.
That is absolutely incredible.
I have the trophy here at home reminding me every day.
For the people listening who don't know about Donna Caponi, she was a multi-time major winner in the Women's Golf Hall of Fame and one of the best golfers to ever play the game. Again, that's just very cool that you were in, as you said, the right place at the right time.
And after it was done, my sister comes in and she goes, "Oh, what happened?" She walks back into the room, and yeah, that was kind of funny. We started laughing because it ended the right way.
Do you and Donna still ever get together and chat?
No, I have not seen her, but she did give me a note that I used to keep in my golf bag until my golf bag got stolen out of my garage. And on that note, I kept it in my little pouch that I have all my valuable coins or markers, and it said, "Thank you for saving my life." So I was a little sad about when that got stolen. So I didn't get that little token back, which was really sad.
That stinks. So you played for a few more years. What kind of led to your retirement from the LPGA Tour?
I think it was a little bit of frustration that how can I play so well leading up to a tournament and then wake up and feel miserable? It was, of course, a mental thing, and my whole body would ache and I would be so nervous. I think I just put too much pressure on myself to work on it and improve it, but it became physical. I couldn't understand how all of a sudden my knee could hurt overnight. Of course, if your body hurts, it's really hard to swing really efficiently and productively. So I think it was 2007, I decided to take a little break, and it was the same time my sister opened an academy in Orlando, and she offered me a job there so that I could work on my confidence and hopefully reboot and come back after a year of working there. That was sad. I mean, I wasn't ready to quit, but I just had to figure something out. I couldn't just keep going and having the same results every time. But I mean, I had to be realistic and face my results that I'm not going to be happy if I don't perform well. So I might as well take a break and reboot.
After the reboot, where did that lead you?
I never came back after that. I kind of enjoyed sleeping in the same bed for more than a week. It was nice to have a regular job going 9 to 5 and then get a solid paycheck. And I started enjoying teaching. I wasn't supposed to be teaching. I was supposed to be kind of the organizer and creating all the golf programs that we had and scheduling them and do some club fitting at the time. But our head instructor had a setback. He had to go and be gone for 2 months. So my sister goes, "You're teaching." I go, "What? You're teaching our golf school. You're the head teacher now. Come on, you can do it." Okay, this is a heavy burden on somebody who was never really taught before, but I enjoyed it. So for 2 months, I did 3 jobs. I set up the range for all the golf schools. I did all the scheduling, and then I was the head teacher as well and did the club fittings. So it was tough 2 months for me, but it was a great start to now the career that I have in coaching or teaching golf.
For you, what's the best part about coaching the kids?
The best part is I can relate to them because I've gone through what they've gone through. I have a lot to contribute to help them, not only on the golf course, but off the golf course. And seeing them smile when they're doing something or performing on the golf course, winning something, that is my reward. And that's what I love about it. And seeing them grow as people, because I've had 3 or 4 students now for 2 years. And the big change in them as human beings and golfers is amazing to be part of. It's really sad to kind of let them go, though, and grow on. So that's the part I don't like about my job. At the same time, it's rewarding to see them move on to college and so forth. But I like the development that you can have with these young students, and it's very rewarding.
After the students leave, do they ever call you and say, Coach Sorenstam, can you help me out with this or that?
Yeah, it happens now and then. And I had a student last year who's been quite often sending me videos through WhatsApp and saying, hey, how's my swing look? What should I practice on? It's nice because you know that they trust you and they like what you have helped them with in the past. It's really nice.
I know that you just turned a certain age, and we won't mention what that is, but are you considering now going to try to play on the senior tour?
The senior LPGA tour itself, that we call the Legends Tour, it is at 45. And yes, I did consider doing that. And I was unlucky because I had surgeries during that time. And I tried to get healthy. And finally, I got healthy enough. And then, boom, COVID hits. After going through 3 surgeries and rehab and strengthening myself, I thought I was ready. And then the tournaments were cut off to about half of them. And I figured it's not a lot of tournaments for a tour. It's going to be pretty expensive, as unfortunately the Legends Tour is not as developed as the Champions Tour is for the men. So the purses are not as big. So I decided to get a job at the IMG Academy instead. I'm lucky now that I've settled in a little bit. And like you said, I reached another number in my age, and it's halfway to 100. And then you can enter into the senior women's US Open. So I have decided to try that. Coming up in a month, I will be trying to qualify for a spot in that tournament that will be played in August this year.
What's the process for qualifying for that?
The senior US Women's Open, they have certain categories, just like they have all the other US Opens. If you have performed in certain events, you're pre-qualified. But since I haven't been active for quite a few years, I kind of have to go and do the local qualifying here in Florida. And it's an 18-hole round. So it's kind of a sprint. You have to play well, and they'll let you know how many spots are available when you arrive, depending on the size and the strength of the field.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity that hopefully you can be successful locally and get to go play in the Senior Open.
Yeah, that would be fun. Luckily, I have a very encouraging boss, so he lets me practice when I have time, of course, at work, so I don't miss out on anything, but I can practice as much as I need to and can. Of course, I can't practice while I'm working with the students, but any other free time that I have, I'm good to go.
With IMG Academy, is it year-round, or is it structured more, let's say, like a college environment with semesters?
It is a year round with 2 semesters. And then, of course, during the winter break, they squeeze in some camps for most sports, and the same thing for the summertime. They conduct camps. And I think we have 1,400 students on a regular basis for the year for attending school there. But the camp, they said we're going to get up to 16,000 this summer and winter combined.
How do you balance your time between all the different students to try to give them all what they need?
In our regular program, we have allotted time, and you have a certain number of students, so you kind of know what to do. And luckily, I've been working with the lower scores in 11th grade this past year, and they're very individual human beings, and they love practicing it on their own. So I could just give them some tasks and move on to the next person. So it's very individualized for that. But when it comes to the camps, you have a bigger variety of students and ability or experience, and therefore it's more in the group setting. But of course, they are larger groups then. Camps are more for them to have a good experience. We call them many magical and memorable moments, and that's what we try to deliver. It's getting a taste of how it would be to become a student at IMG Academy, no matter what sport you're participating in. As you know, camp is a way for parents also to get little freedom from their children and a safe and good environment. So while they're having fun and learn something. Golf is kind of tough in that way because we're outdoors. Florida, summertime, it's pretty predictable that it's going to start raining between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. So a lot of indoor activities that we have prepared, because when it rains here, it usually is lightning and thunder as well.
Between what happened with COVID and now your coaching duties, do you ever get a chance to go back home to Sweden?
I have not been back for 4 years now, but my husband really wants to go and visit Sweden. He's actually trying to learn Swedish, which is awesome. Hopefully in the next year or two, we will have a trip there and I can show him around my beautiful country of birth.
What do you miss most about back home that you don't get in the U.S.?
The area that our parents live in, it's so beautiful because it's kind of a very small suburb and it's near water and it's summertime. I know that Michigan looks a lot like it and then they have the same kind of weather, but the memories that you've had as a kid growing up. I think that's what I miss the most. And some of the foods and the candy.
So which candy do you miss the most?
I usually have an order of what's called Turkish pepper. It is a very hard licorice with pepper inside, so it's very strong. It's kind of one of the things that people either love or spit out.
I know which I would choose, and it wouldn't be the love one.
I love licorice and black licorice and Swedish chocolate. That is my favorite.
Charlotta, I want to thank you for joining the I Play 2 podcast today and sharing your story. It's been fantastic. I loved having you on the show, and hopefully we'll catch up down the road. Thanks again.
Thank you, Rob, for having me. It was a pleasure, and take care. And I can't wait to listen to all your podcasts.